This is Andrea with Parking Lot Debrief. Okay, I am here with my friend Kyle Duarte. Began as colleagues and then I think have morphed into friends and colleagues. Um, and yeah, first we'll just start out with a short bio. Share what you feel like sharing with folks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. This has been a fun experiment that I've been following
Yes.
along with you on.
In
So
the
hey, I'm
behind the scenes you've had even of the panic of doing all of this.
the tears, the fears, the joy, all of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, who are
Yeah.
you?
So I'm Kyle Duarte. I use he, him pronouns. I grew up in Southern California in LA in a mainstream school called the Tripod Program. It's no longer really around, but it was an awesome school. There were like 50 deaf kids in my high school, and
Ooh.
that's where I got exposed to the deaf community in ASL. Then I went to live in the Bay Area of San Francisco, up in Northern California. Did my PhD in France, and now I live in Washington, D.C.
Nice.
Um, I I have this kind of non-traditional track to becoming an interpreter, which maybe you gleaned from my story so far. But my undergrad was in mechanical engineering, so I'm a nerd. I love building things and unbuilding things. And then I went to Gallaudet for a linguistics degree, which is how I started to narrow down into interpreting, but got a PhD in computer science. Um,
Left turn.
you know, hey, when someone pays you to live in France for a little while, you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to touch on
Uh,
all that, like, have you felt, because we've talked about this with a lot of people, having a diverse background in terms of education, has that, obviously it's helpful in interpreting, knowing things about things and how to learn. Um, Not that we all have to get PhDs in computer science, but
please
having,
don't.
right, right. But it's helpful to have, that's just an encouragement to people of like, you don't have to get your BA or master's in interpreting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I tell people that all the time when they ask about my foray into interpreting and running my company. And I say, the having gone through grad studies and doing research and presenting my own research has really helped me understand how to interpret in those settings with deaf people who are presenting their research in conferences. Um, so I didn't set out to start a company, a language company. I don't call it an agency, which we can talk about later if you want to talk about that. But I just, people were like, "Hey, you know about conferences, you know about research and presenting research. Do you want to, coordinate interpreters for this?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And so it's grown from there, which is great. I love it.
That's the segue, which I should have put at the beginning of why you're here and what we're going to talk about. Um, Basically that of coordinating conferences, because that's not how we originally met, but that's how we continually seem to work together is conferences that you have coordinated that I'm fortunate enough to come and interpret at. And I'll brag for you. I think you've become the best of the best, or at least the learning of what is needed and then incorporating it and doing it, and listening to the feedback from all parties and doing it. That seems kind of rare. So we'll get into all the nitty-gritty of all of that, of doing the job well, of coordinating a conference. But yeah, you run, as you say, a language service company versus an agency. Should we, do you want to talk about that a little bit now or no? I'm just curious
Can
why
I
it's not called an agency, or we can hold it for later.
Yeah, can I comment on something you said just
Yeah,
now, and
go
then we
ahead.
can talk about the agency word. Uh, you said you said you're doing better work and you're incorporating feedback and these things, and I appreciate that you said that I'm the best of the best, but I don't believe that. Um,
That's why I'll say it. Yep.
what I think is really important, which is a lesson that I learned in engineering, is that we prototype things all the time in interpreting. We will put out an interpretation of something and it's a prototype. and it's not perfect. And we have to figure out, like, was that good? Could it have been slightly better? How could it have been slightly better? And so we do that with our language production. And I do that when I coordinate conferences because it's never the same. And I'm always learning about how to make it better, which I think all of us
Imagine.
can really benefit from. So,
Yeah.
no. But you asked about
Pause.
the
Go.
the unagency.
Yeah, just very curious of why and yeah, why?
Yeah, so 2 years ago at the RD conference in Baltimore, I presented a workshop with my bestie Tiffany Hill, who I think you've just had on the show. I saw a little preview on Insta.
Yes.
Looking forward to her episode. Um, she and I just we have this way of approaching our work that I think is very different than what most people think of when they think of a traditional agency. Um, and that's it. It kind of boils down into a few tenets. Number one, we are sole providers of the services that we provide. Like we don't have huge staff interpreting ranks. We don't have schedulers. We're doing it all ourselves.
Hmm.
We know the interpreters we work with, like
Oh,
personally. We
imagine.
know most of the deaf people that whose names we see come across.
And that's by design,
Um,
I
that's
imagine.
by design. Like you can't create a good fit if you don't know who the fit who what the who the puzzle pieces are, right?
Right. Right.
That's kind of the crux of the situation.
Yeah.
Um, we um, we believe in the agency and not the business structure, but the wherewithal of interpreters to do a good job.
Mm.
We trust them wholeheartedly with professional communication and admitting that they messed up sometimes and working through, once coming back to this word, prototyping the possibility of making it better. And we provide a ton of prep, which is going to be really important to the discussion here today.
Yep.
Um, we do so much education to our clients, and so why prep is important because we're trying to get ourselves out of this hi interpreter, go sit in the corner and do whatever it is that you do because I don't care what you do and I have no idea what you do
Yep.
mentality, and more into the, oh, this is a human who is making decisions about access and helping all of us, hearing and deaf people who otherwise can't communicate, be a cohesive team. And
Yep.
that's an important role here. And so that we take that on and then we pass all that prep along to interpreters and wait for it, we expect them to actually prep.
Oh, wow.
Believe it or not.
Well, why can't I call you an agency? What's the word? Why is the word icky to you versus
It just it comes
service?
with all this it comes with all this baggage right now, I think.
Yep.
It
It
comes with this
feels
idea that it's
it feels closed in. It's a machine, it feels almost.
yeah, like, oh, whoever said yes first got the job.
Yeah.
It's two interpreters who might not work well together, whose signing styles are totally different, who might not be great for the deaf person. Um, it's all these other things that are just detrimental to the product.
Yeah.
Because our product is more than just language. It's all the other things that go into it, right? It's who we show up as. It's how we interact with people. It's how we get paid. Like, let's be honest, we have to get
All of
paid
it.
something.
Hmm.
All of those things are important. And when you lose that human-centered approach to the work, it it becomes that mechanical process, right?
Yeah. I
So
like
that's
it.
what we're trying to avoid.
I like that. That's a lot of common thread among many of the people I'm talking with, the human-centered approach. And I'm like, is that the next interpreter model? Like, are we, we were helper, we were conduit, we're this, we're that. Like, I think we're okay acknowledging we're humans and we bring stuff to this situation. Not that it needs to interfere, but it's there. That's a whole other conversation. Let's get to conference interpreting. A lot of how you run your language service company. I gotta find the right
Company.
words you wrote
Yeah.
down. I didn't want to say agency. Uh, it translates to conference interpreting. And when people think conference interpreting, most people get very sweaty and get very nervous. And conference interpreting, I think we can frame it as anything and everything that where a large body of people come together to talk about their specialized work, whether that's an RID conference or an NAD conference, but also we're talking about that social worker conference and that engineering conference. So it's the ones that one deaf person comes to, or the one that 50 deaf people come to, or one that's for the community at large. So just to frame that conference can mean all of that. And you probably do all of that when it's like you need two interpreters, but you also sometimes need 25. So just the concept of conference interpreting, um, often that's looked as like a lofty goal for interpreters to get to. It's hard work, it's big work. Um, yeah,
And I want to frame, I want to talk about what a conference is, because I
yeah,
think that's an important frame for
yeah,
why we think of it that way.
yeah,
And I don't think that thinking of conferences as a lofty goal is incorrect, but I don't know that interpreters think about why that is. So,
correct.
so the why is really important to me. There are linguistic, social, physical demands in a conference setting that are not like the 9 to 5 of the same deaf person, right?
Right.
So deaf person A is a researcher at a university. Okay. Their interactions with their staff or their or the PhD students that they supervise or whatever is going to be totally different than what happens when they go to a conference. So I mentioned the linguistic demands. We're talking high level language when we're presenting research. You have to
Yep.
sound like a researcher, which means
Yep.
you have to listen to how researchers talk
Yep.
and figure that out. And that's not, lab chat with research assistants. Um, those social demands are possibly actually the most important demands because conferences are places where people come who are not usually together to exchange ideas.
Yes.
And those ideas are exchanged in sessions where you're presenting research, but they're also exchanged between the sessions when you have a casual lunch with a colleague that you don't see very often, or you're searching out the grant officer at a federal agency or at a grant making organization to chat about the possibility of getting some grant money to support more research, or any other number of, or finding someone who might give you your next job.
Right.
So those conversations are less predictable than they normally are. And they're very high stakes. Like getting a research grant or getting your next job is an important thing. And then the physical demands, because so many conferences are not in the 9 to 5 block. They start early, they go late. Um, you're walking around a huge convention center with 18 minutes to, use the restroom, maybe grab a bite and change to the next room. So you're hustling. So all of that makes the dynamics of a conference really, really taxing. Um, and I often tell people one other thing about the time demands of a conference. Conferences are sometimes on like weird schedules, right? They're like Sunday to Tuesday.
Yes.
And and so I know interpreters who will come who like aren't used to it yet, and they'll just be like, "Oh, okay, great. I'll do Sunday to Tuesday. I'll take Monday, Tuesday off for my regular gig, and I'll fly home and I'll go back to it on Wednesday." And I'm like, "You need a break. Like
Yes.
you're gonna be exhausted."
It is. And I wrote down, like you said, these are all the whys why the conference is what we'd say, the pinnacle, the thing to look to. Like you said, and I think we think they may be the wrong whys. Sometimes we think of the wrong, not the wrong reasons, but like not the reasons you just named. And I immediately thought of, I think most people fear the eyes. There's a lot more eyeballs on you, whether that's deaf or hearing. You are seen more on a stage. You are seen in front of a class. The possibility of having a mic handed to you. and interpreting into English when that's not something you do all the time. Uh, and then register, like you said, the linguistic aspect of it, whatever which way you're working is faster. And yeah, I think those are like the three things that came to mind of what most people are like, conference. Um, and most people think of RID or like NAD or these conferences where we come together and others can judge us is another aspect, which not those aren't valid reasons, but they're not the reasons that we should pay attention to, I guess, is what I was thinking of. Um, and you think you're talking of like high level conferences where research is happening, and that's a lot of what you handle. But this also can be applicable to some Joe Schmo who's going to a conference for electricians or whatever. And that's just as complicated and just as big and just as much of an opportunity for this person to make connections with people. So yeah, all of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimately, the conference environment is one where people are wanting to network, they're wanting to learn, um, and they might be looking for their next step. So you got to be on it. And like one example of this that I often tell interpreters, if you're on an on-call, with a deaf professional during the day, you can pick up your phone. The deaf professional is going to be like, "Hey, can you come interpret this conversation?" But in a conference setting, you have to be on it. You have to be ready. Like at a poster session, deaf
Yes.
person's presenting a poster, random hearing person walks up, you got to be there. You got to be ready.
Yeah, I mean, where do we even start with all these points we've got written down of the best framing also we can go off from this, and I will give the kudos to Kirk when we had this conversation, the three of us at a conference, um, about the concept of a conference being staffed or a conference being coordinated. And we were like, oh, yes, there is a difference between the two. Um, what do you feel the difference is between the two? And then that'll lead us to where you do
Yeah,
great.
thanks to Kirk Neurath for
Yeah.
that, and also his episode with Sarah Blackberg was really, really lovely.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this episode and you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it after this one. Um, yeah, staff versus coordinated. Um, it's it's being purposeful about the teaming, and
Yeah.
and I'll be the first to admit that there's a gradient there, right? Like not every I can't coordinate like I always want to coordinate. Sometimes the requests come in late or the budget is tight or whatever. There's some demands on the situation where, yeah, like we're piecing it together because like I have a conference just over a week from now that just came in and I was like, okay, well, yeah, we're not getting a consistent team across 3 days, but they're great interpreters and we'll make it work through the rest of the coordination process, which is the prep request that I mentioned and other things. Um, Another part of coordination is interfacing with the deaf attendees. And so many entities are like, so I always require the name of deaf attendees before I will start a request. And I'm shocked at the number of requests that I get from agencies that are like, oh, a deaf person is going to a conference about insert, you know, really terse description here. I'm like, I have no idea if I'm qualified for this. I don't
Right.
know who this person is. And instead, coordination means, hey, thanks so much for this request. I got all the basic information about the conference, what the schedule looks like. Can I have the name of the deaf person, what they're presenting, and even better, like, can we be in touch? Because then I can get a sense of what their goals are. Are their goals to go to 17 sessions back to back and just learn a bunch of stuff? Great. Are their goals to network, to schmooze? Great. But that knowledge is important for selecting the interpreting team and preparing the interpreting team, right? So
Right.
that's coordination, what coordination looks like rather than staffing.
Which then you go the opposite, and staffing is warm bodies. Staffing is time, location. And that's like, here's the time, here's the place, put some people there. And when an agency, or I feel like when an agency, and I understand they have to fill all the other stuff. Oh, and they have a conference going, so let's just fill it with people. That's not coordination, and it feels different as the working interpreter, and I'm sure it feels different to the deaf attendees. Um, and you have to have a relationship with the conference coordinators. You have to have a relationship with those people who probably do a yearly or annual conference, or and you hopefully can keep that contract. Are they the hardest part? Like, are they the, is that the most like labor intensive aspect of conference coordination is talking with them?
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah,
it?
usually.
Yeah.
Usually. Yeah. I mean, getting them to understand what we do, getting them to understand why prep is important. Uh, sometimes just getting them to release the name of the deaf person. They're like, well, that's confidential. Well, I'm gonna show up and figure it out, right?
Right. And why? And wouldn't, and in the end, are most deaf people grateful that you reached out to find out all this information? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And coming reflecting back on what Kirk and Sarah said, like if a deaf person is presenting their own work at this conference, they want it to sound good. They want it to match the register of the people that are there. And if I'm showing up because someone just staffed me at 9 a.m. on Friday, having no idea what this deaf person is doing or what their research is or their presentation's about, that's they're going to freak out, and I don't blame them, right?
And that's the deaf perspective. Thinking also then as the interpreter, I don't, if we're staffed, we need to fight back more. I feel like if we're staffed, I'm not stepping foot in there until I know what the hell's going on. Like I just, it's my responsibility. And there's many people who I've teamed with, or they're just like, yeah, I don't know. And there's some situations I can walk in and feel like I'm comfortable with like not really knowing. But conference wise, no, I need to know exactly what's happening. I need to know who I need to look at. Like if um I'm gonna follow them around for a day.
Yeah.
Um
And that
leading in, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
and that's so part of what Tiff and I talk about in the unagency model is infecting agencies with better business practices because
Yes.
the goal for Tiff and I is not to take over every agency in this country.
Can't.
The goal is to better educate interpreters about what it is that we need to succeed so that we can ask questions and we can demand those things. So if you are someone who you're going to conferences and you feel like they're always staffed, and you maybe learn something from this episode, then go back to the agency who's maybe a hometown agency in your community and you care about them, but have a good conversation and say, like, look, you're not really setting us up for success because we're not getting X, Y, or Z.
That.
Um,
Not set
and
up for success.
yeah.
Well, and that leads me to prep. I'm sure you are the king of prep to the point where I'm overwhelmed and I'm like, which folder do I open? I can't even look at this until the day of, or my brain will explode. And I always joke that you never give enough prep because he gives way too much prep. But like, I'd rather have way too much than not enough. Um, because that's often the case, is not enough or any at all. So what is your process for prep? Why, what can others, people who may be coordinating or staffing conferences ask for or do that would be helpful?
Yeah, prep can look like a bunch of different things, obviously. Sometimes you can get enough prep simply from the publicly facing documents, right?
Yeah.
Like the conference app might have a schedule of all the sessions, and you figure out which ones you're going to. You read the little blurb, and the bio of the person presenting, and you can get a sense of what's going to happen. Sometimes prep means that, especially at some academic conferences, people are literally reading scripts at a
Yeah.
mile a minute.
Yes.
And for those conferences, prep means getting those scripts. And that's a heavy, heavy lift, because most of those people don't want to give you those scripts.
Of course not.
But it looks like a bunch of different things. And being someone who goes to those environments, is in conferences often, you can get a sense of what is needed, what's overkill, if you will.
Yeah. But you share um a lot of information with us, which other conferences or even agencies or anywhere has shared. I love getting pictures of the team of interpreters. I love getting the
Yeah,
names. Like
yeah,
that's
that was
amazing.
that was something that I learned from AHEAD, the Association for Higher Education and Disability. Theirs is literally a bulletin board in the exhibit hall, and it has photos of all the interpreters and captioners.
Yes.
So I do that the same. I put that in a Google Doc. I'm a Google Doc kind of guy. Um, I put that together because often I'm coordinating larger conferences, and I try to mix locals with non-local, and you might not know each other. You might be assigned to work with someone and you don't know what they look like. Um, and the deaf people as well, I share that document with the deaf attendees, so they
Nice.
can, if they're like in an environment, they're like, I think that's an interpreter. So they're not just showing up and being like, standing in the corner signing interpreter. Who's the interpreter in the room? And
So yeah,
hoping someone's wearing all black.
right, right. And so you share with deaf people the pictures of all the interpreters, and sometimes we've even gotten pictures of the deaf people
Yeah,
per
yeah.
their agreements. I'm sure they had to agree to that, but or just find their picture online.
Yeah, I only use publicly available sources. I don't
Nice.
use so if I'm friends with you on Facebook, I will not use Facebook. I mostly use LinkedIn and YouTube. So something that someone has already purposefully put out on the internet. So I try to get a headshot of the person and a language sample of the deaf folks. And then if they're coming from some institution, if they have like a web page on the institution, then I'll link to that as well. That's all prep, right? Learning who it is that you're working with. Uh, it's important.
I mean, if you don't send me a language sample and I know I will be working into English for this person, you bet your ass I'm going to find a language example. But some people don't, but having it given to me or having it in one place is extremely helpful. So,
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because we've all been on teams where we show up and we're like, oh, we clearly don't have the information we need, and we're trying to cobble it together. But that's not. I mean, you can do that, but now you have an entire team of interpreters working whatever number of hours times the number of interpreters, whereas it could have been the coordinator who did that.
right.
Um,
Because that's your job. You're coordinating us. So I enjoy that. That it's um
yeah.
when it comes to putting together a team, you mentioned keeping some local folks wherever the conference is held and bringing in some out of towners. What is your thought process on that?
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts, and again, this is framed by the fact that I often coordinate large-ish teams. Now, large can mean four interpreters, it can mean 24 interpreters. But it's not usually just two interpreters.
Right.
Um, so I see value um, in having clients use the same organization year after year.
Hmm.
As you may be aware, most conferences are run by an organization that has a headquarters office somewhere. But the conference itself will move from city to city every year. And I firmly believe that contracting with a new agency in a new city every year is not good for access because
No.
you just don't have continuity of the knowledge of the conference. So when I contract with my clients, I'm clear that I want this to be a multi-year contract. So part of that will allow interpreters to be consistent. So sometimes we'll get the same interpreter year after year. And part of that means that we then get to work with locals in cities who we might not be able to work with. And this is so coming back to this idea that conferences are like the pinnacle of one's career. Like I said, I think that there are a lot of unique challenges inherent in the conference environment. And
Mhm.
it's really important that we invest in interpreters to get through those challenges, to learn about those challenges, so that deaf people have full access in conferences, no matter what city that conference is in.
Yep.
And if we just bring people in, fly them in, and then they fly out, then we're not investing in the local interpreting community.
Yeah.
And that's a detriment to ourselves. And
Only
that's
having out of towners come in every year
right,
to wherever the conference is. Yeah.
right, right. So that's why I mix up the teams with locals and non-locals. I mix up the teams with age, with experience, with cultural backgrounds, with other identities. There's no reason that a team should look like 17 of the same person.
Yeah. How, um, because then you're building a base everywhere. And conferences are typically going to, the big cities over and over again within the years. Um, and that's kind of how I got started. I did conference work for years, and that's how you build a whole network of human beings and friends all across the US. Um, how do you keep ego jerks, people doing conference work? We're in tight quarters for days, for many hours. It's hard work. We're stressing. How are you keeping your teams copacetic? I don't know, cool with each other, drama free.
Uh, so now you're asking me my secrets.
Correct. And we're
Okay.
assuming that we're drama free, which I'm like, no, we aren't. It's good.
No, we're not drama free. We
We're
do have
human.
to what was that?
Sorry, I was
Yeah,
thinking
we're
because we're
humans.
humans.
Yeah, we're humans. We have to recognize those stressors, those linguistic, social, and physical demands on our bodies. Um, and so we have to be direct sometimes. We have to call things out. We also have to have grace for each other. That's and you might be an interpreter not in your hometown, so you can't go home, right? You're going back to a hotel where you feel isolated, you're not next to your loved ones. So we have to support each other. And support doesn't mean, oh, it's okay, it's okay. It can mean, hey, this was not great. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, what I really love though is eating together.
Yeah.
And this is I don't know how many interpreters know this about me because I don't get to eat with interpreters all that often. I love cooking. I cook
Mm.
dinner every night. I actually don't really like going out to restaurants because I love cooking so much. And I feel like meals just in the old world, in the rest of the world, like meal time is a time for you to let go of the day and bond as whoever is around your table. It is
Mhm.
an intimate thing that every human needs to do, and it melts away a lot of problems. And so I really love encouraging people to eat together during lunchtime, to go out after the day is over and have a nibble together, maybe a drink. Um, I think that social engagement where you can be interpreters together is important. Um,
Debrief.
and and it reminds you that you're just normal people. Oh, you like mushrooms? I hate mushrooms. Like that wouldn't come up.
Right. Well, and you're right. You're stepping out of that stressful space and seeing each other as people. The best pals I have nowadays are from conference work because we are in those spaces together in a stressful moment, clutching onto a microphone together. Um, and you were the one of the first few people I worked with at my first NAD conference. And I remember sitting down and I remember looking at you and I was like, I think I know your name and face. So and it was a deaf presenter, obviously. And I was like, I'm very nervous. You're like, all right, we're good. We got this. And I did all right, I think, but we did all right. Um, and I wrote down like conferences definitely push interpreters in all of the ways. And one of them is the social, the emotional, because we're stressed and all of our bad habits and or reactions may come out in that moment because we're stressed and how to deal with people. Um, I also think that's helpful from a coordinator to ensure that the group gets along and we can problem solve together, encourage open conversations. And really, those tough conversations, I feel like that's where they most come up is at conference work because there's so many layers to what's happening. Um, yeah.
And uh having having that relationship with the deaf attendees, whether it's one or multiple, throughout
Yes.
the conference and prototyping during the conference. Like, hey, deaf folks, is this going well? Is there anything we can do that's better? Let us know. And having interpreter meetings, whether they're set at the beginning of the day or they're super informal, just called for 10 minutes during lunch, checking in. Um, Knowing that people are going to be tired, knowing that people might not be feeling great or they left their favorite blouse at home that they thought they were bringing, whatever, um, supporting each other as humans so that we can do good work.
I'm sure, as you said, you've prototyped in many different conferences. What has been the best approach with the deaf attendees? Like, I'm sure it changes every conference and every human, but like, we want, I want two interpreters to follow me around to every lecture that I go to. Two for me all day. Or I'm going to go to XYZ as long as someone shows up, I'm fine. Like, I'm sure that's what you have to figure out and put all that together. Um, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes they can be any of those things. If it is two follow me all day, then maybe we'll split up the morning from the afternoon or day by day. If it's two show up and I don't care who it is for each session, then I get to play with it and be like, okay, you're going to see every single interpreter on this team.
yes.
And you might like some of them and not like some of them, and you can tell me who you like. And maybe you'll make connections with interpreters that you want to interpret for you remotely during your
Right.
regular job, something like that, right? Um, that's the fun. To me,
Yeah.
that's fun. And that again is investing in interpreters, because we can get a sense of which interpreters are gonna make new connections. We can we can get a sense of which interpreters are really strong interpreters who are comfortable in this environment and are happy to have a younger interpreter along. Um, and and you mentioned ego.
Mhm.
Um, the younger interpreters need to, I think this is true for any interpreter, but I think younger interpreters get especially that nervous energy because they feel like they have to walk in and know it all and be great.
Yep.
Um, but especially when you have a coordinator who's doing their job, you will be put in a situation that may challenge you, but you're not going to sink.
That.
Um, yeah.
That's most, and I was going to ask that. Do you bring on not interns, but maybe I've worked K-12 and I don't do a lot of conferences, but I really would like to. And I've got skills, but I just have never been in this space. Or I'm brand new and I don't know if I want to try. I want to try this, but I don't know where I'd fit. That's coordination versus staffed. And I
Yeah.
like that. You'll be held. Yeah.
Yeah, another approach, which is one that's great, even if it's just two interpreters on the team, is if you have a long day, say the day is 10 hours long or something, then you can you can have a core team of two that are doing the, 9 to 4 period, and then one of them may go home, and you bring in a younger interpreter for the last 3 hours of the day to work with the interpreter who's been there. Um, so
Nice.
that's a way to kind of switch it up and get some new folks in, even if it's a smaller interpreting team.
That crossover. And I'd say with your conferences, and it's getting better. I feel a handful of others as well. When I did conference work, it was I can't even stand up at the end of the day. Like I can't even see straight at the end of the day, which to me my work is garbage. Probably majority of the day because I'm running to eat and running to go to the bathroom and running here. I think it's getting better. And I'm sure that's a budgetary issue of not being able to have that many interpreters or a coordination issue, but how to coordinate breaks, ensuring that I'm still getting enough work so I'm engaged and I'm here to do what I'm doing and making money, but I also can eat and go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
huge.
so you're kind of heading into the compensation territory, which I love to talk
Sure.
about.
Yeah.
And I'll give props to my friend Amanda David, who has a compensation workshop that she does. Um, so she talks about this concept of total compensation, which is something that interpreters really need to know about, and we don't talk about it enough. But uh, you could get the same request from two different companies, and one company will say, "Okay, we're going to pay you X amount of hour," and you feel like the rate is low, but they're going to give you some prep time. They're going to pay for your parking. They're going to pay for portal to portal. They're going to throw a per diem in. Versus another company that say, "We're just going to pay you this rate, and we're not really going to pay you anything else." And their rate is higher than the first one. But if you do the math, like who actually wins?
Right.
And that's something that all interpreters need to consider when they're looking at compensation offers. This has nothing to do with conferences per se. Um, but it does have to do with how I
Right.
run conferences and compensation, which is that I hate asking for receipts because interpreters don't
We
send
don't.
receipts
We
quickly.
don't. We don't. Well, and you say all that, I think we are stuck in the mindset of, well, like, well, mileage, well, I, or well, parking, well, hourly, well, it does. We have to think different. We have to do the math and or look at it when we get a flat rate in the end, because I imagine that's easier for everyone on the other end. Um, but I can imagine people come to you and they're like, well, why this, that, and the other,
I
right?
think mileage makes total sense if you live in a rural area and you're driving to far-flung places.
Right.
If you're living in a big city in America, which is where most conferences take place, right, in the downtown of a big city, then typically, and this is not universally true, but typically, the further you live outside of the downtown area, the less you're paying for cost of living. So therefore, it's the decision that you've made to live in that location, not a decision that is then on me to compensate you to get
To pay
yourself to the
you.
downtown
I
core
love
of the
that. I
city,
love that
right?
explanation. You decided to live there, so I'm not going to pay you to drive here. But like if
Well,
but if the rate, I always have to remember if the rate is like decently high, then that covers my 20-minute drive. Like what's the difference of me making 11 more dollars to drive in, you know? Um yeah, that's always something to think about.
so coming back to how I like to schedule and
Yeah.
compensate. So I like to build in downtime, which I call prep time, because we all know that people are not sitting at home prepping a full day before a conference. They're prepping between sessions.
Yep.
Um, so I build in downtime to prep between sessions, to have bites to eat, to use the restroom, to relax. And I pay from the start of the day to the end of the day, um, at a flat rate. So I rarely include things like uh, uh, Like I try to avoid mileage. I try to avoid parking reimbursement, uh, ground transportation, those types of things. It just makes my life easier
Mhm.
because if on a team of five interpreters, one of you is waiting 4 days after the conference to send me your receipts, then that means then my invoice to the client is delayed
Mm, mm,
for all five interpreters, not
totally.
just for you, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you want to share, but like, I'm sure that's a question sometimes people wonder of flying people in, getting out of towners to come. Some conferences do pay my airfare and lodging. Some pay for lodging, but not airfare. And we have to decide how much I'm going to make this week is worth this $200 flight. And so a lot of that figuring out. Thoughts on that and how you handle that with the conference, the hearing people, the other end of justifying those costs.
Yeah, not every conference is sitting on a bag of money.
Right.
Um, and so you do have to get a sense of what their budget is. Um, I would also encourage you to know what they think their budget is. If you're looking at a nonprofit organization, all nonprofits in the US are required to file what's called a Form 990, which is a public document that shows exactly how much money they make every year and how much money they have in the bank.
Mm,
So check that out if you're getting pushed back on expenses and you feel like this organization has some money.
yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing. This is one of our points here. It doesn't have to do with this portion of the conversation, but everything is negotiable, right?
Yep.
Everything's negotiable. You make a good faith offer, and they say, "Oh, I don't know if we can pay all that much for flights and the hotel." So you say, "Okay, well, what if we offer a flat travel stipend?"
Ooh, yeah.
And some interpreters take it because that works for them. Some don't. Great.
Yeah. I
That
think,
that works too. I'm okay with that.
yeah.
And I'm okay with interpreters saying no. I'm
Hmm.
okay with saying no, and I'm okay with making an offer that I think is a good offer and an interpreter turning it down. And I can't take that on to me as being, oh, I made a terrible offer. It doesn't always work for everyone every time.
Yeah. Um, on the bottom here, we have biggest challenges and biggest rewards. Do you want to go to that?
Sure. Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge overall? Because there's a lot of layers to what you do. Are we the biggest challenge? Is it me?
I have to though. So, okay. So this is now you're really pulling out a secret.
I know you're saying it on a podcast, man.
I
Whatever you want to
know.
share.
So you were very kind and you said that I'm tops the top or
Yeah.
however you described it.
Yeah.
But I there is no way I would do what I do without the interpreters that I work with. The interpreters that I work with are top notch. And
They are.
and this comes back to the question of ego. Like especially when we're having younger interpreters on a team and they are walking into this room and they're nervous, they immediately sense the feeling of the room. When you have other colleagues who are excellent at what they do and are really nice people, then you're building a pipeline that is not just skilled, but is compassionate and searching to not be egotistical. They're searching for humility and professionalism. And so I have to say that like there's no way I could do what I do and force a bunch of egotistical interpreters into the box. Like it's just that would be impossible.
Yeah.
Um, Biggest challenge, everything's going to change. Whatever you came in thinking was true is not going to be true in 2 hours. Like people are going to change sessions. They're not going to go to a session. They're going to ask for an extension. Oh, I want to go to this happy hour.
And for
That's
that, are you someone who has an extra interpreter to float always having, and you, what's wonderful as the coordinator can hop in and do the job too. Sometimes that's not the case who coordinates us. But do you have floaters for these
Yeah.
reasons?
Yeah, I do, when the size of the team allows, sure.
Yeah.
And that's I want to hit on that. Thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that point up
Go for
because
it.
I once had an interpreter come up to me and say, "Hey, I would love to be the coordinator for one of your conferences so I can get my feet wet." And I said, "Absolutely not. We need we need interpreters who are super
Do
ready to
it.
be put anywhere because the things
Right.
are going to come up last minute."
Right.
Um, which was not to, not to be mean, but
But I
you
mean,
need flexibility.
yeah. Yeah. And I've been coordinated by people who aren't interpreters. And I was like, if you could, right now, you could come and help me for 20 minutes. That'd be great. And they just couldn't. Um,
Yeah.
Things change. And I'm just the interpreter there doing and telling, being told where to go and what to do. I can't imagine being the one having to figure out all the pieces. I'm not sure that I want that responsibility at all. Uh, and you do it with grace, because it'd be hard. It's a lot of stakeholders to keep in mind and to keep happy. Um, and you're right. You're luckily you have a wonderful team who's like, cool, send me wherever. What do you need? Where should I go? Do you need somebody? And everyone's willing to do the work and be there for each other.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And so Andrea, you and I worked a conference a couple of weeks ago in Denver. It was a very large team. It was that 24-person team. We had a number of captioners that were also joining us remotely. And what was really, really fun is we had a small cadre of local interpreting students who were providing sighted guide services for blind attendees, and then during the sessions could jump in and observe working interpreters. And those interpreting students were just like that was enough for me to wake up the
Oh,
next morning.
they were
They were
so
so
excited.
excited. They wrote such beautiful thank you letters to say that
Yes.
they had a great time. One even said like I was kind of wondering if like I was going to continue in this program and now I'm 100% going to
Oh,
graduate. I was like that's
that's
awesome.
awesome. And they
Yeah.
get a sneak peek in and like the friendships that are made and the conversations that we have between sessions are the best interpreting conversations I have. Um,
Yeah.
because then I get the perspective of people from DC or California and what happens over there? What do you guys do over there? Um, yeah, that's in the rewards. We're in the biggest challenges right now, but things
Sorry.
change a million times. That is definitely
Yeah.
a big challenge. Being
There's a there's
flexible.
a there's a big challenge that that we've kind of skirted around during this episode, which I think is um, what's the word? It's this notion of deserving to be on the team
Mm-hmm.
among interpreters, this notion of ownership. And I've seen those teams, um, those conference teams where it's the same team every time.
Pros and cons to that. Yeah.
Which are right, there's pros and cons. I think there's more cons than pros. I will be
Mm,
very honest with that.
yeah.
But I've had interpreters ask, they've said this. They've said, "Oh, well, I was on this team before. Why wasn't I chosen this time?"
Yeah.
And that to me reflects a notion that you deserve to be there every single time. And when we do that, we are failing to mix it up. We're failing to invest in new people. Um, and that it breeds this notion um, that I
Ownership.
think it's the ownership, but I think that it's a seed to this concept of conference elitism
Mm-hmm.
when it shouldn't be about conference elitism. It should be about the challenges that conference pose and why they're so high stakes.
Yes. And immediately when you said that, I was like, I would have feelings, I think. I think I would have feelings if I was like, "Ah, it's here and he didn't call me." But with you, I would be like, I trust the reason why. Okay. Some other areas or agencies or people, I'd be like, why? Like, it is, I can't fake it and say that I wouldn't have feelings. But there's some folks who would coordinate that I would trust why. Um, so that's an important piece. Um, I like that the concept of conference elitism. And also, we're not a match for everything and everyone. Like, there's certain spaces I don't want to go and I can't go and I shouldn't go. Um, just because I have a blazer doesn't mean I should be there. Um, but yeah, another challenge is you need stamina.
Yeah,
Long days,
you have to
lots of
drink lots of
stamina,
water,
lots of
lots
water,
of lots of water. That's I think
bags
people
of
forget that.
snacks,
They're like, "Oh, I'm eating candy or I'm drinking coffee." You need water.
right? Stamina, a lot of stuff back to back. And I think you have to build that up. Stamina doesn't just unless your is like that every day. It's hard to jump into a conference. By the end of the week, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go, and then the conference is done. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I learned this. Just a tip. I learned this from my physical therapist. If you are traveling for conferences and you get tension in your upper back, which I know a lot of us do,
always.
go to the hotel gym in the morning. Just it doesn't have to be long. Just run down there and do a lat pull down.
Oh, nice.
You know, you grab the
Yeah,
bar above your head and you pull it down, and then it comes back up. And that will just do it a lightweight. Do it like 30 reps for 5 sets. So it's super like light. You're mostly using it to stretch. You're not
yeah.
actually like trying to build muscle. You're stretching. And I've done that. Just it takes like 15 minutes at the most. And the amount of stamina that I have in my arms during a conference because of that,
That's smart.
tip top.
Conference work does kick my ass. Like my body hurts, which is just a sign to me that it needs to be stretched and used in different ways. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Um,
But when you
biggest
get to
re
be my age,
I am your age, dear. I am that. What are the biggest rewards? There's so many. We've said a lot of them, but there's so many.
well, yeah, I mean, so like your entire podcast has been so like so introspective of what interpreters do and why. And we're obviously in a profession where we're here to support deaf people in their lives. And like I said, like these are critical moments in many deaf people's lives, going to these conferences and figuring out what they're doing with their careers.
And they're spending a
Um,
lot of money. I just want to add that they're spending a lot of money
yeah,
either there or their work is. And I've had that feedback of like the interpreting services were shit at this, and I spent $900 to be here. So that's just a little
yeah,
thing. There's a lot to go into just a 5 day conference. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the friendships that you develop
Yes.
in with deaf attendees, with conference with other interpreters that you're working with, it's you're going through the hard times together and you're coming out on the other side, which is awesome. Um, if there's skilled interpreters are in high demand, as Andrea will remind you, as on several episodes of this podcast. Deaf people have far surpassed the education attainment levels of most interpreters.
Yep.
Um, which is not to say that interpreters are dumb or couldn't do that, but that we need to stay current on what's happening in the lives of the deaf people we work with. And we have to listen. I think Kirk said this. We have to listen to how hearing people talk about these things so that we can talk about them that way.
Yes.
Um, because otherwise it's going to be like, so the number goes up in this line here, and that's really it's an important difference. No, significant difference.
Right.
as yes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you get to
Yeah.
travel and have fun.
Yeah, and you get to go to different places. Honestly, that's why I feel like I could do this podcast is because in my 19 years, I've traveled the US and I've done a handful of conferences. And so my network is larger than if I didn't do that. Which then I go, Kyle, and which is the best. Kyle, do you know this person? And you text the same. Hey, do you know this person? Are they trustworthy? And so the networking aspect of it is just huge. Um, and yeah, I've made a lot of great friends, deaf and interpreter colleagues, CDIs. I get not many spaces do I get to work with CDIs in that space where that be feeding them or with deaf blind attendees and things like that. It just it's fun to watch well-oiled machines come together and work. It's like magical to see it all happen. It's like my most favorite to see access happen, and we're like, look at this, look, everyone's good.
Yeah.
Um,
And since 2020, I'm like, I actually like to hug people.
yes.
Touch them in the flesh.
Yes. Yeah. Conference interpreting for a few years there was rough. It was different. Me.
Yeah.
I like the
Yeah.
in-person stuff. What anything else you want to add? I think we covered most all the points. Um, I think these were great tidbits for interpreters who do conferences, who may want to do conferences, people who own agencies and or coordinate or staff conferences also. Um, and we even talked like it should be you and I on this conversation, and we should also invite a deaf person who goes to a lot of conferences.
Yeah.
We talked about that. I would love to hear their perspective of what do you look for, but it's hard because that's one person who has their experience of conferences, which I want to hear. But yeah, I'm very curious if they'd be like, "No, we don't care about that, and we care about this." Like, very curious what a deaf person would say.
Yeah, there's an interesting narrative um, among deaf professionals regarding how much work they have to do their work, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
so I'm always in the mode of at a conference, I'm trying to judge how much work you want to do this work versus how much work you don't want to do this work. Do you want to just show up and have it all be magic? We can
Right.
make that happen. Do you want to be part of the decision-making process? Awesome. Happy for that to happen.
Nice.
Um, but not every deaf person is the same way, and I can't expect that to be true. And to be honest, sometimes you're going to go to a conference and the deaf person's just going to be a little aloof, and they're like, "Well, I have to go to this to get,
Right. And they
professional
don't care
development
about,
credits," and they don't
right.
care. And
Right.
don't take offense to it,
Right. To each their
right?
own. Right.
So allow that to be true. Allow that truth to exist, that deaf people can be as invested in this conference being a success as they want or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always am I talked about with Sarah and Kirk, I'm always wary of how much burden I put on the attendee, the deaf attendee, to educate me in this moment or prep me in this moment, whether they're presenting or not. But I'm always like, can we ask? And we'll ask the deaf people and they'll give us this, but like, can we be prepped on the sign choices before we go in there? So I don't have to be fed by this deaf person and where they can just attend. Um, yeah, and how much work we put on them when they're already working. So that's always a
Yeah,
good thing to keep in mind.
yeah.
Any last tid Oh wait, I have a list of things that are extra really great stuff that you have done that I just want to share with people. Um, Uber Eats, they have group orders where Kyle just sets up a nice little page link. It all is a link that you share with all the people working, and we all can pay for our own orders, and it all arrives together at the same time. Food.
It's magic. It's
And I don't
magic.
have to run to the desk and get it as an Andrea myself. It's there, it's magic. And you didn't have to do much of anything, but it was so helpful to have food instead of having to go wait in line with all the other attendees. Um,
Yep.
Group Me. Is that the name of the app?
WhatsApp.
No.
Group
WhatsApp or
GroupMe is one. Yeah,
oh
but I
no,
use
different.
WhatsApp.
Yeah, just a group text of all of the interpreters and you.
Yeah, and I use WhatsApp. I know some people are like, oh, I have to sign up for WhatsApp.
Yep, that is,
I
yep.
use it for a couple of reasons. Number one, because when you have a big group with people who use Apple and people who use Android, and it's a text message, sometimes it gets messed up.
Mhm.
And the other reason is the WhatsApp notifications are a little less intrusive than a typical text message. So when interpreters are working and they're getting messages, it's
Right.
less like annoying. Uh,
Yes. But I can get a hold of the group
yeah.
and I
You
can
can be
say,
like, hey,
I
I
need
got flagged
help.
down by a deaf person and
Yeah.
I'm alone. Yeah.
That. Like I have a hard time when I don't have contact with anyone and I'm stuck. Um, I wrote down prep, having information, having it easy to find. I I see the prep, but my brain can't hold it, so I don't prep until it's time to prep for me. And so I need to be able to put this in my email search and find that information quickly and pull up a Google Doc on my phone quickly. And that's always nice. Easy invoicing is wonderful. Time to eat, time to go to the bathroom, but still enough work. Another piece, I trust my teams. That's not always the case when I show up to work conferences, no matter how big or small. At least with your work, even Tiffany's work or others, I trust that the person sitting next to me has got my back and I've got theirs. It's not just a warm body. Oh, you've never interpreted a conference before? Oh, you're terrified and you don't want to do half the, oh, okay. Well, crap. Because that's happened many times. And then I'm holding all of it all day. Um, and yeah. And then I'm also trust that I'm not going to be left alone or left out to dry. Like, oh yeah, sorry, we ran out and oh, we need an interpreter over here. You're going to have to do this hour solo. No, it just doesn't happen with good coordination, or I'm not stuck interpreting. If I do get stuck, and I say that with respect to deaf people of not being stuck interpreting on a break, but like that's what we're supposed to be doing. But if I need a break, otherwise, I get one. So all of those things are super important, at least for me as an interpreter on the team.
Yeah, and just to wrap up that conversation, we mentioned that things change, right, at a conference. And so I'm always looking to my team to say, hey, you had done a great job of planning breaks during the day, but then the schedule it got changed because of, this last minute request or whatever. Would you mind swapping me out in the afternoon? Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that. And having eyes on your own schedule and then being like, hey, Kyle, this happened. Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Yep.
Love it.
Open
Yeah,
feedback.
I don't want you to feel like, oh, I can't tell Kyle this because, yeah,
Right. Yeah. This was great. Are there
it
any
was
last
awesome.
things you want to say?
That I am just so impressed by your ability to throw this podcast together. It is
I've talked
enlightening.
about it.
I know.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, it, you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
I'm honored to be a guest, and I hope folks have enjoyed the episode.
It's been fun for me. It's been great to record stuff and then I do all the tech stuff. And then by the time I release it, I'm like, I don't even remember what we talked about. This will be fun. And then it just goes out there. So I don't have any fear. It just goes out. And I forget people listen. I'm just like, this is fun. Let's put this out there.
Yeah.
Um, I ask guests to highlight a deaf-owned business or deaf organization at the end. Who do you want to highlight and talk about?
So this is slightly self-serving because I serve on the board of this group. It's called Signs and Smiles. It is an organization that is dedicated to early literacy access for deaf kids, particularly in Latin America. We started in Nicaragua and have now expanded to Mexico. We have an app in Nicaraguan Sign Language and Mexican Sign Language those apps are aimed at parents of deaf children with language resources that they can use at home before their deaf kids get enrolled in school to hopefully close the gap of language deprivation. So those apps are available on our website, signsandsmiles.org. If you want to learn a little LSM or NSL, please download them. And soon to be coming out should be an ASL app
Good.
for American families. So
That's awesome. Signs and smiles. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful for folks. I hope you didn't share too many secrets because I hope you can still do your job and you will. If you all get the chance to ever work with and for Kyle, it is a treat. And thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
thanks, friend.